There we go. Hello and welcome to the Charlotte Show featuring very special guest this evening, Andy Griffin, and also Si. Hello, Si. Thank you both for joining me this evening, giving up your Friday night just before we play Aston Villa in about an hour's time. We will talk a little bit about that. But before we do that, I wanted to sort of chat to Andy. I think there's a real sense of disquiet among the fan base at the moment. And so it's really nice to kind of go back to a time where things were happier, which is obviously when you were playing, Andy. So we have a couple of questions that came in ahead of time. So I'll ask them of you if that's okay. So you were brought in by Kenny Dalglish and you played for Kenny Dalglish and Ruud Gullit. What was the atmosphere like when Sir Bobby joined the club and the feeling around the place for those 5 years? I suppose the first question is when he came in, like what was the atmosphere like? How were you all feeling?
Well, I mean, when Bobby first walked through the door, you know, you're talking about real footballing royalty. That's how I would describe Bobby Robson, along with other things. And I remember just looking to Bobby thinking, you're the man who gave us the 1990 World Cup, possibly the greatest World Cup for me personally, in my living days. And with Bobby, I mean, when you first meet somebody, there's always that certain level of respect that you should give everybody. Now, the more time you spend with somebody, those levels of respect go one way or the other. They go up or they go down. And the respect Bobby had or gained from the players that he spent time with, or just the people that he spent time with, those levels of respect from me shot through the roof, because you had a man that was compassionate. You had a man that led by example. You had a man that had bags and bags of enthusiasm, desire, commitment. He had empathy. Don't get me wrong, he was ruthless, like every good manager has to have that ruthless streak. But it was just the way he spoke to people, the way he cared about people. His management skills were second to none. And I do look back and think, well, what made Bobby so good? Was it the tactic side of the game, or was it the man management side of the game? And I would certainly say it was the man management side of the game, and possibly that's certainly over the last maybe 20, 25 years, that's possibly the most important trait a manager needs to have, particularly nowadays. So when he walked through the door, yes, footballing royalty, huge amounts of respect, but those levels of respect just shot through the roof the more time you spent with him. I mean, we did have our little arguments here and there, but I guess as some managers and players do have. But I mean, he's the Sir Great Bobby Robson, and it was. I mean, I'm very honoured and very privileged that I had him as a manager. It's simple as that.
Yeah, it's so nice hearing you talk about him, but it's also, Si, I don't know if you got this, but really depressing, because all of those lovely things and brilliant things that made him such an iconic and excellent and just amazing man and manager are not the things that we currently seem to have around the club.
Not at all. And every single podcast we've done with Andy on Patreon so far has been exactly that. We enjoy the memories, and then you come back to the real world when it finishes and say, oh, man, it's so different now. I found one of the most interesting things you've said there, Andy, is about the man management, because, and I don't want to make this about Bruce because we're going to enjoy the olden days rather than worry about the current manager, but comparing Robson to Bruce, who is also described as, you know, he has a lot of flaws, but he's supposed to be a good man manager as well. But I would say in a very different way, because the impression I got with Robson is he made the team believe in itself, whereas the good man management we see refer to Bruce as that he's more of a pal with his players. He gets on well with them. he takes it easy in training, they get days off, and he gets on well with his team. Whereas Robson, I think when you say man management, you're talking about, he made the team really believe in itself. He made you feel 10 foot tall. When you went out on the pitch, he made you want to play for the team. Was that how you kind of remember it? Is that what you mean by a good man manager, Andy?
Yes, I mean maybe not every team, but some teams will have certain players in there that we might call mavericks. And I guess I'm referring to the likes of Laurent Robert. And as a manager, if you don't manage him well, you lose that kind of player, basically. Well, Bobby had a knack of managing individuals, not the team, but that is wrong. He managed players that really needed it. The likes of myself, I didn't need it so much. The likes of Laurent needed the arm around his shoulder. He needed a day off here and there. He was from France. I think it was Paris. So Bobby would give him a little bit of time to go home. Just those little things get a little bit more out of a player. And he identified that, and he realized that everyone isn't the same. We're not all robots. Everybody is different. We're all individuals, and we all tick and operate very differently. So Bobby was able to identify that very, very quickly. And maybe that comes with experience. I think it's a little bit unfair to kind of compare the man management styles of Bruce and Sir Bobby, because Bobby, a little bit like Sir Alex Ferguson, was in a league all on his own. He was the godfather of world football. He was the granddad of world football. Everyone was pulled towards Bobby, and there was. I mean, we often talk about players playing for certain managers. I personally believe it's a disgrace where you have certain players. When people say, "Oh, that player or this team aren't playing for the manager," I think first and foremost you play for yourself, you play for your teammates, and you play for the fans, and you play for the club who's paying your wages, which gives you A, B, and C. I do understand. Don't get me wrong. I do understand the importance, of course I do, of having a manager that listens to the players, but there is that boundary from a manager's perspective where you can't be pally with the players. You have to obviously get the most out of that individual, most out of the team, know how everybody operates, but also you've got to lay the law as well, because like anybody, if you are not leading and you haven't got very good managerial nous, it becomes a little bit of a shit show. So, and Bobby was one. He gained that respect because of what he'd done and who he was, but it was also just how he managed the team and the people, and just how he was. He led by example. He was out there taking warm-ups. We're talking about a guy who was in his late 60s. How can that not inspire you?
Yeah, that is amazing,
Class.
isn't it? And I think it goes back to what you say about the respect for a person. You have that base level, and then it goes either up or down. And if you respect him, it's not about being his friend. It's about having that respect and wanting to, and building that relationship. I have a question coming from Lee, who's watching live. Lee says, which goal did Andy enjoy the most? The one at Juventus, or the absolute thunder bastard you scored against Charlton the weekend after? Which one did you prefer?
Well, I know which goal I'm remembered for. And in terms of, if we're looking at it aesthetically, the Charlton goal was far better. I'm well aware that the Juventus goal is it Andy Griffin's goal? Was it an own goal? And I understand.
Come on.
I totally understand the argument there, but it's not. It's Griffin on 62 minutes. I'm telling you now, it's my goal. So aesthetically to look at, the Juve goal wasn't particularly a nice goal, but it was an important goal. We managed to hang on. We won 1-0. And I think we were the first team, I'm not sure if anyone's ever done it, but the first team to lose the first 3 Champions League games and then go and win all the next 3 and then progress. So the Charlton goal was the better goal, but the Juventus goal was the more important one.
Yeah, and we did actually have a question about that. I think it came from Gil, who I think is watching. How did Bobby manage to, Sir Bobby, please, manage to turn the team around after losing the first 3 matches in the Champions League, as you just mentioned there, Andy? Sort of, I mean, you could see how that could really dampen the confidence of a team. You could see how you would go in with this cloud into your next one. How did that happen? Do you remember? Do you have a feel?
I don't. I mean, I can't actually remember that there was any kind of special talk or, you know, that where Bobby kind of galvanised us or spurred us on, you know, because I don't believe that even though we lost the first 3 games, I don't think we got totally dominated. I don't think we ever come off the pitch. I know we got beat. I think it was at home against Feyenoord, and you think, well, maybe we should have won that game, but we didn't come off the pitch thinking, you know, we've just been totally outclassed, outbattled, outfought, and we are way out of our depth here. That certainly wasn't the case. So from a manager's perspective, I don't think it was a case of just trying to pick the players up. We just needed to take the odd chance here, get that goal. Could we keep a clean sheet? We managed to do that. I mean, let's not forget, against Juventus, Buffon was on. You know, the saves he pulled off were phenomenal. But there was always that belief. Now, whether we always had the belief because of, you know, we always had goals in the team, particularly with Alan and Craig. Kieran Dyer was on fire. Jermaine Jenas. You know, we always had goals. Yes, maybe the defence wasn't the greatest, wasn't the best, but we always had that belief that, and this is genuine. We always had a belief that we could go into any game and give any team a run for the money. So it wasn't necessarily the manager going, right, what do I say? You know, what do the players need to hear? It was a little bit more of the same, the similar. Go out there, do what we all know you can do, and it will turn. Just make sure you keep that belief, which we did that, and we got the result and managed to turn things around.
Yeah, I think you're right with the fixtures. Juventus away, Dynamo Kiev away. They're not easy fixtures, and we just happened not to take a result in those first few games. But I remember, I don't think the 0 points after 3 games was fair. I think we deserved something, and we hadn't been playing badly, as you say, Andy. And the results finally came, and you spurred it on.
I mean, if you look at the Juventus game, I mean that game. I remember Bobby pulling me saying, "Listen, you're going to play. You're going to man mark Pavel Nedved. Wherever he goes, you go. Don't worry about getting the ball." So when we actually had the ball, I wasn't going looking for it or anything like that, because I wasn't one of the creative players. My job was to just win that battle with Pavel Nedved. I don't think I've ever ran so much in a football game, and I don't think I've ever been so tired in a football game. But we did score, and it got disallowed. And I don't think it. I think it got disallowed for offside, and I'm sure it wasn't. So it could have been a very, very different scoreline. But like I said, we went to, I think it was the Stadio dell'Alpi, Juventus away. And okay, we come away and it was a 2-0 loss. But it wasn't like we got out-battled or outplayed by you know, the old lady that, you know, Juventus, a mighty force in world football. We didn't. So even though we lost, sometimes you've got to look further than the result. And look to the performance, and a performance. Even though you've come off the pitch and you've got beat, if you look at the performance, that can inspire you as well. And I think it did.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and one we've kind of, as Newcastle fans, found a little bit frustrating this season, because particularly at the beginning of the season, our results, if you were just looking at results, were okay. We were winning the odd game, we were getting draws and stuff. But if you actually watch the football, it was very clear it was going in a downward trajectory. It was very disorganized. It was really players not knowing where they were going to be, different formations every week, like players looking confused on the pitch. And I think when you just look at the results, as so many pundits seem to, they were saying, well, I don't know what Newcastle fans are complaining about. Where, it's the reverse for you in this instance, where, if you just look at the results, like, well, they're not winning games, but actually you were playing really well. It was just the odd chance you needed to convert. So it's really interesting to hear you say that. I wish it was that way round this time.
I mean, football, it's such fine margins between winning a game and losing a game and getting relegated or staying up. These are such fine margins, and you're always looking for the 1%. And I know that we are in a business that is predominantly, because it isn't all just about results, but predominantly about results. Now, when I said predominantly about results, people want to be entertained as well. So if you're at a football club where you are getting results, but the football isn't good enough, at some clubs, results aren't the be all and end all. We want to be entertained, don't we? And some managers and some football clubs, some teams do it better than others.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex Hurst has asked a really interesting question, I think, which sort of brings us to the fact that we have got the team sheet for this evening. For those out there watching who haven't seen it, or Si, if you haven't seen it, and just for our reference, we've got Dubravka, Kraft, Lascelles, Clark, Dummett, Hayden, Shelby, Willock, Joe Linton, Fraser, and Gale. So it's not.
Before you ask his question, Charlotte, I was asked by a colleague at work today, does Andy fancy getting his boots out of the cupboard because Emil Kraft is having such a bad season? I'm sure Andy could still do a better job.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of those.
I'll probably give you a good 2 minutes. And then something will happen with my calves or my hamstring, something like that. So I think I'll be good for 2 minutes, and that'll be
That's
it.
2 minutes, 2 good minutes more than Emil Kraft's given us all season, Andy. So that would be fine. But Alex's question's an interesting one, and I wonder on your thoughts. Emil Kraft has really been struggling this season in your position, in Andy's position. Do you feel better coaching can help a player, or at this level, is it all down to the player? What do you think?
Predominantly. I mean, how old is he?
Kraft, he's not old.
Early 20s. He's young.
Early 20s?
Yeah. So I would say, generally speaking, it's down to the player. Don't get me wrong. A good coach from a positional point of view, maybe a defensive coach, or a good manager who knows the game inside out. And believe it or not, some managers, their attention to detail is phenomenal. Their understanding of the game is exceptional. As where some managers, you might be surprised to hear this, it isn't really. So going back to that question, I think it's predominantly down to the player. I think what is something's coming through about he's 26 years of age.
Yeah.
So if he's not performing well now, and he's not been performing well for a period of time, I don't think that it has much to do with the coaching staff or the manager. That is simply down to the player, and maybe he's just at his depth.
Yeah, that's
agreed.
It's different if you're 17 or 18, 19, maybe 20. It starts turning at 21, 22. At the age of 26. So
it's such a funny beast, isn't it? Football, like at the age of 26, you are beyond help. Like you're so young, but
maybe not beyond help, but mentally at 26.
Yeah, to be honest, I just assumed he's younger because I'd never heard of him before this season, and he's turned up at his first season in the Premier League. So you just assume he's younger. But I suppose, is there an element, Andy? And again, I'll try not to go on about the coaching, but of how long it might take a foreign player of that kind of age to adapt to the Premier League? Might he need just a bit more time to get used to the pace of the Premier League?
Yeah, exactly. So that might be his get out of jail card. Well, actually, I've come into a new country. It's obviously a new league, and I need a little bit of time to get used to maybe the pace of the game, maybe the physicality of the Premier League. It's certainly not as physical as what it once was. That's football in general. So maybe you could play that card and you could understand it. But listen, I'm a manager. we haven't got much time. You know, I need you to be playing well straight from the off, really. You could argue that Frank Lampard got the sack because of his signings didn't hit the ground running. So you are at the mercy as a manager of the signings that you bring into your football club. They're either going to get you a new contract, get you move you on to a better football club, or they get you the sack. It's as probably as simple as that.
If only. And by the way, I'm being kind. I think Emil Kraft's rubbish. I don't think there's a player in there that's struggling to adapt. I think he just isn't good enough at this level. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
We really have that sort of problem at Newcastle United at the moment, with really quite a few of our players are struggling at this level, are not Premier League footballers. I mean, I don't know how much you know, Andy, about Joe Linton, but it's baffling to me that he gets onto our squad every single week. He's playing again tonight, and I think, what is it, Si? Scored 1 goal since we signed him? 2?
1 goal per season, I think. So I think he's on 2, maybe 3 if you include cups. I'm sure someone will immediately correct me here.
Yeah, he's our number 9. It's just
it's gone spectacularly wrong. And some will say that that's not necessarily Bruce's fault, because he kind of was already through the door by the time Bruce joined, and I can sort of that is true. I don't think Bruce had much to do with the signing itself, but he signed off on it, and he's had to try and get something out of him. And after a season and a half, we're not seeing a Premier League player. And as you say, Charlotte, he's still playing games. I mean, how long? Because of the money involved, I guess, Andy, you'll have some experience of this. When it's a big money signing, is there that just extra amount of pressure on the manager to keep playing him because it's such a huge investment? Because that's what it feels like. And we can all see it. We just don't think he's good enough. But yeah.
I mean, 1 or 2 goals in how many appearances? What we talking?
50 odd. 50 odd.
Well, that's awful. So there's no excuses if that's your centre forward, and you're relying on him. And I think he was a big money signing as well at the time. You're relying on him to get a majority of your goals. 2 goals in 50 league games is diabolical. It's unacceptable. It's not good enough. And I mean, from Steve Bruce's point of view, if the player was almost already through the door, it's not like he's kind of Steve Bruce's player, really. So he could just say, well, you know what, I'm not playing him, and therefore, because he's not Steve Bruce's signing, Steve then doesn't necessarily have to play him. If it was Steve's signing, then he is under pressure to justify his signing, justify his decision making. But it wasn't. So you've got to leave him out. But then you've got to then look at players around you and think, well, I mean, surely there's got to be someone better than that can get more goals in 50 odd appearances. From a centre forward's point of view, that simply isn't. It simply isn't good enough. And you can bark on about tactics, you can bark on about assists, but good centre forwards don't just always throw excuses out there and go, well, I'm not really getting much help. I'm not getting assist. Well, you know what? Go and create something for yourself. Don't just go pass the ball on to other people. You've got to pull your finger out your backside, produce a little bit of magic. We paid A, B, and C for you. Get a goal out of something. Don't just be looking at other players, pass on the blame, take some responsibility. But what I would say is, if you only let yourself down, and this is just football in general, you only let yourself down if you don't care enough and you're not working hard enough. If you're not good enough and you've been put in the team, that isn't your fault. That isn't your fault if you're not good enough. But if you care and you're giving everything you can to try and change things, fair enough. So, I'm not sure. I haven't seen enough of Newcastle to cast a good judgment on Joe Linton. So I'm not sure. Is he just not good enough? Is he working hard enough? Is he doing A, B, and C behind the scenes? But I guess we can't look past the stats, really.
Yeah, I think what you've said is exactly right. It isn't his fault that he's being selected every week. And I think, from my perspective, he is kind of doing what he is capable of. And I don't think it's through lack of trying again. I just think he's not suited to the Premier League. He's certainly not suited to Newcastle United in the Premier League. And we've had more than enough time. I've just looked up, it's 3 goals in 59. So it is shocking. And I don't think he's got assists to fall back on either. I'm pretty sure assists you could count on one hand. So yeah, it's just not happening for him. It's just the baffling thing is that why does he keep getting picked? And we can only assume it's the price tag and the pressure on the manager to get something out of him for that reason.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, sorry, Charlotte, sometimes you're looking as from a business point of view where, if you just drop someone, the value goes right down. And, obviously Steve Bruce keeps playing him, but 3 goals in 50 games, you can't be worth much on the market now.
But he's certainly not increasing his value every time he's on the pitch. That's not happening either. So it's a lose-lose situation, I think. He cost us 40 million, Andy. It's our record signing. It's something very strange happened there.
I mean, that's not his fault. That's not his fault. I mean, it's like when Pogba was bought, £90 million. Pogba doesn't put the price tag on his head. Joe Linton didn't put the price tag on his head. Someone has thought, right, well, he's worth 40 million quid. Well, they've certainly got it wrong.
Yeah.
The mystery is who came up with that price.
Yeah. It is a mystery. It is a mystery. Along with the mole in the training ground, that is another of the Newcastle United mysteries. We've got a question here that came in just earlier, just at the beginning of the show, Andy, that I wanted to ask. Lee Dixon had a 10-year-old me in tears when he did a job on Ginola. A few years later, I'm cheering on AG12, giving him a hard time. How did AG12 approach going up against Ginola one-on-one?
Okay. I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest wingers in the game. Without a doubt, the best-looking winger in the game. Now, I remember playing against Tottenham at White Hart Lane against David Ginola, and I certainly lost the battle on that day. And it was a learning curve for me. It was an experience. And you're talking about a player who was, I mean, I don't know if he was right-footed, was he left-footed? He could go down the line, go inside. He was an exceptional player. And he was big and he was strong. Not necessarily the most brave, wasn't the bravest of players, but what a great player he was. And then after the loss to Spurs and me getting the run around by David Ginola, I think it was a few weeks later where we're playing against Spurs in the semi-final of the FA Cup at Old Trafford. And I think it was a few days earlier, I get a letter through the post thinking, all right, I mean, I didn't get much fan mail, but a little bit. But it wasn't fan mail. It was a letter off a Spurs fan. In there was a little letter saying basically David Ginola is going to destroy you again and get the better of you. Spurs are going to win. Spurs are going to win. And there was a picture of me on the floor, David Ginola flying past me, the flying Frenchman. And I'm thinking, okay. And I guess you either rise to the challenge or you crumble, and you kind of you've got a choice. What do you do? And I guess when a manager picks you, you've got to go out there and justify his faith in you. And I did that, and I remember going out there, and I remember just thinking, try not to let him get the run on you, because he can cut inside, he can go down the line, and just be as brutal and as physical as you possibly can early doors. Because I often thought, if I can clatter someone early doors, then I'm not going to get a yellow card, so I can kind of get away with a bit of a warning. If you're approaching 30 minutes or maybe the second half, it's just usually a straight yellow. But you've usually got one toughish tackle, 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes. I didn't really get the opportunity to do that. But nonetheless, I managed to win the battle with David Ginola. I learned a lot from the first game. And, it's to learn, you've got to fail, haven't you? You've got to have bad experience to then come back stronger and go, right, well, what didn't I do then? What did I do wrong then? Right, well, did A, B, and C. So today, I'm not going to do that. I've learned my lesson. Today's going to be very, very different. And thankfully it was. And it was probably the best, not the best, but it was probably one of the biggest moments in my career, and certainly possibly the biggest moment of my Newcastle career, because it was a game where I come off the pitch at the end of that game, haven't won the battle with David Ginola, haven't learned the lessons from a few weeks earlier, thinking, you know, I am a Newcastle player. I am good enough to be in the same team as the likes of Alan Shearer and Rob Lee, you know, more footballing royalty, because, you know, there is that element of doubt. And I moved to Newcastle as a young player, and you have to go and prove yourself playing with, in my eyes, godlike people, you know, because I was so young, and Gary Speed and Duncan Ferguson. I was an Evertonian growing up, you know, and Stuart Pearce, you know, a huge fan of Stuart Pearce. And then you're in there and you're thinking, you know, I just joined from Stoke City. I'm living in a 2 up, 2 down in Stoke, little terraced house, hopping on the bus. And next minute I'm in Newcastle with football and royalty. Dalglish is your manager. Then it's Hubbard, then it's Robson. But yeah, I'm snowballing on. I'm getting excited and the enthusiasm and what have you. But yeah, that game was a huge game for me personally, where I genuinely thought I'd kind of earned the stripes at Newcastle.
I'm wondering how on earth this Spurs fans got your address to send you this letter. Are you sure it wasn't Ginola himself? Just toying with me.
Maybe. I mean, it didn't go to my house.
Right, okay. Fair enough.
Thankfully. I mean, I would have been asking, you know, I might have thought it was a family member or a mate or something like that if it come to my house. But no, it went to the football club, and then you get your mail, and then you open it.
Well, they didn't check it first.
And I was like, right, okay, well, we'll see. You know, roll your sleeves up and let's go.
That's amazing. I love the idea that somebody's like thought, I'll get him. I'll get in his head. I'll send him a letter.
Baiting you. Yeah, baiting you.
It's amazing. Did you get much of that, or is that stuck in your head because that's like one of the only ones?
No. That I think that was the only. I mean, that wasn't the only bit of mail I ever had. I did get, I did get the odd bit of mail. Not a lot, but in terms of from a rival fan trying to wind you up, yeah, that was the only bit of mail. I mean, it obviously backfired. You know, maybe the letter kind of inspired me, and it had nothing to do with me learning from my mistakes in the previous game against David Ginola.
I like the idea that they're still like keeping tabs on you, and they've just heard you say that actually it spurred you on, and it had the opposite effect, and just like cursing themselves. All right.
I hope they're watching and regretting their decision.
There's a couple of questions coming in. It's a couple of questions. Mark's watching and he wants to talk about the Inter game, which was 18 years ago, I think yesterday, but maybe today. But before we get to that, because that's obviously a big memory, and also Andy's done a lot of Patreon podcasts on our Patreon platform with Si talking about that in depth. So we will talk about it because we should talk about it. But Alex has the all-important question. What were your favourite drinking spots in Newcastle when you were a player here? Do you remember? Did you used to go out? Did you go to Uno's?
I mean, well, I got married very, very young and started my family very young. So, you know, I didn't get bamboozled by the bright lights of Newcastle. So I remember moving up there. I remember moving up there at the age of 18 and thinking, you know, people have said to me, you know, the nightlife is this, that, and the other. I mean, I had no idea why they were telling me, because I wasn't a drinker and I wasn't one for, you know, pubs and nightclubs. But I just remember thinking, young lad, done well. I've been given a good contract. Obviously, back then, this could potentially be the recipe for disaster for me. I need to move out of the city centre. I mean, you know, I said that I went from living in a 2 up, 2 down terrace in Stoke. They then put me on the quayside. I was in a rented accommodation on the quayside, overlooking the river. And you're thinking, good God, I'm only 18 years of age. This is phenomenal. But I have to move away from the city centre. I don't want to get sucked in with the distractions or anything like this. So I ended up buying a little bungalow off a gentleman in his 90s in Felton, north of Morpeth, literally in the middle in the middle of nowhere.
I've got a story about that,
Yeah.
Andy. So I went to school in Bedlington, which isn't, it's halfway up there. And we did a school trip to Felden when I was about 10. So it would have been like 98, 99. So I presume this is when you'd moved there. And we were walking around. I don't know what's in Felton that made a school trip need to go there. There's a few like old Victorian buildings or something like that. When we were going around taking rubbings off the concrete and stuff. And then we were walking through this street of bungalows. And I remember a lady popping out of one of the houses. And I'm sure you won't mind me telling it now, but she said, "Oh, there's a Newcastle player lives in that one there." And we were like, "What, really?" "Oh, yeah, and Andy Griffin, he lives there." And we were like, "Nah, come on. In this little house here." So me and a bunch of school kids came and nicked a load of gravel from your driveway and said, "I've got some of Andy Griffin's gravel." So you might have come up to a big gap of yeah. I'd stolen half of your driveway and went home with pockets full of it.
You should have just knocked on.
I was during the day. You were probably we were pretty sure there was no one in. So we might have even tried knocking if I remember it. But I nicked half your driveway.
Yeah, I bought this bungalow. I think it was £90,000. Park View in Felton, middle of nowhere, and we were training in Chester Lee Street. It took me a day to get to training. It was miles away. But I just thought, I just need something that's in the middle of nowhere, no distractions whatsoever. And me and a very good friend of mine to this day, I mean, he was a good friend of mine at school, Chris Scully, and he come up and he spent a bit of time. I mean, we went to see this house, bought the house off an old gentleman. And I remember one evening, I think it might have been a Saturday, and a couple of friends were up, and we just went down to the pub playing a game of pool and what have you. And we walked in, and everything just went quiet. Everyone just turned around, looked, as if saying, "Who are you?" And it was a little bit eerie, a little bit spooky. When we're playing pool, and then one guy comes over, said, he put his money on the side, and he said, I'll play you next. There's my 20p or whatever it was. And I had a game with him, and we were having a little bit of a chit chat. Staunch Geordie, staunch Newcastle fan, Stephen Dodds, good friend of mine to this day. And he's like, what are you doing? Obviously you're not from round here. And so then obviously I'm explaining it. He's like, "No way. What are you doing in Felton?" I'm thinking, "Well, I live here. I live in a bungalow." And he's thinking, you must be thinking, "Are you okay? You're a young lad. You should be down at the quayside." But it was a lovely place, and I was there for a couple of years.
I'm so surprised, but I think I'm more surprised, not that you lived in Felton, although that has come as a surprise, that that you had that kind of self-awareness at 18. Like, that's very young to be so aware that I need to focus on this. This is really important to me. I will move away from the city. I think that's really impressive. Do you not think so?
I think if you want to become a footballer, you've got to be very single-minded and very, very headstrong, and not be influenced by the crowd or any sort of peer pressure or anything like that. I never drank. I never liked alcohol, and if I did go out, I wouldn't drink. And not necessarily because I was a footballer. That was obviously one of the points, but I didn't like it. So it was a blessing in disguise. So I was always, I guess I was comfortable. I was comfortable with being unliked. I guess, it didn't bother me because I had a dream, I had an ambition, and no one was kind of going to try and take that away from me or, create a distraction, so to speak. So, but then when I did move to Newcastle, well aware that, and you hear a few tales, will this player come, and before you know it, he's out every night, and this, that, and the other, and his football's gone south. And I certainly didn't want to fall into any kind of trappings or anything like that. Went and bought a bungalow, what felt like 200 miles north of Newcastle, in a little village of 30 people or something like that.
That's so nice. Do you think you prefer smaller place? Are you from somewhere small? Do you prefer it like that than the city anyway?
No, I mean I'm just from a normal estate in Wigan, so it wasn't a village. It was an estate. I spent a lot of my time down in a place called Kirby with my grandparents as a child. A huge council estate. So it wasn't like I was from a quaint village location growing up, and I kind of wanted to go back home or replicate that feeling of home. It was just a case of get away from the bright lights, no distractions. You're here to play football and nothing else.
I think that's really impressive.
But I have been up to Newcastle a few times since and had the odd beer. It's a wonderful place that I thoroughly love going back to, and I genuinely, whenever I do go back there, there is this air of excitement. Because I spent 6.5 years there, and they were wonderful, I guess.
And you were so young when you came. It's such a kind of formative time as well, isn't it? Sort of those years to sort of. It's very. I mean, you're always going to look back at your early 20s with a fondness. I think I certainly do. Alex wanted to also know what mine and Si's favourite watering holes are. I like the Forth and the Town Wall sort of pubs around there, around the Central Station.
You give me an opportunity to big up the Mile Castle, or as we refer to it, HQ. It can't look past Wetherspoons that plays cheesy 90s pop on a weekend. So Mile Castle, when it opens again in June, we'll be back.
Excellent.
I remember there being a nightclub called Jimmy's down near the bridge or something like that, I'm sure. But I'm going back.
I think that's right. Jimmy's rings a bell, and then there's a Julie's, and there was the boat as well. Did you ever go to the Tuxedo Princess? Do you remember that? That was moored. Horrible.
No, I've never been on that. I brought a friend up to Newcastle and lost him on a night out, and he said that he ended up on that. Was it Tuxedo Royale?
Tuxedo Princess.
Sorry?
The Tuxedo Princess.
What was it called? Tuxedo Princess. Yeah, so anyway, he ended up on the boat. So he told me the next day. He obviously found his way back to the hotel. And, yeah.
Revolving dance floor, Andy. Revolving dance floor.
Yeah.
That can't be good. That's sick inducing.
Yeah, but
that can't.
The boat's not moving,
a few drinks.
Let's have a look. Yeah, Joseph Gardner's watching, and he's, commenting on the same. Was it common for 18-year-olds to show as much maturity or focus as you did? Very impressive how disciplined you were. You must have been a manager's dream come true. I suppose that's.
I mean, I guess when you're looking at the amount of players that don't succeed, or they succeed but they can't. They don't have longevity, and before they know, at the age of 20, 21, 22, they've dropped down the leagues and kind of dropped out of football. I think when you're looking at one of the traits needed, it is having that mental strength and having a focus and having a goal. If I go back to earlier days when I was, say, 15 and I signed for Stoke City, whenever all your friends are kind of going out, not doing much, just hanging around on the streets, I'd have to then think, well, I've got the chance of playing for Stoke City. I have to get up in the morning, or I have to go down on Saturday night down to Stoke, catch a bus, 2 trains, another bus, stay with a family that I didn't know. Saturday night, play a game on a Sunday, maybe walk to the train station and repeat that journey back. Well, I was prepared to do, and I would say this to any young up and coming footballers: if you have a dream and you have an ambition, you have to become relentless and unbreakable in that pursuit of that dream and that ambition. You simply do, and I threw all my eggs into one basket, which I kind of wouldn't advise people to do. That education is obviously vitally important. But yeah, I mean, I just threw everything at it, and I was mentally strong. I didn't care what anyone said, whether they agreed with me, not agreed with me. It was all what what was important was what the manager thought, and what your coach thought. That was it, nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll just continue to be astonished that, like, at 18 you had that focus. Like, at 18 I was all over the place. I'm not going to lie to you. Let's have a quick look. We've got not long left, actually, Andy. I promised Andy it would be 45 minutes, which we've done. So I will ask you maybe one more question. Somebody asked what you're up to now. Do you want to give us a quick overview of what you've been up to? Because you've got some cool projects.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, when you retire from football, some people have an idea, they have a plan. They, whether that's going into football management, whether it's coaching, whether it's operating their own business, whatever it may be. I was very unsure of what it was I wanted to do, and I didn't want to kind of start walking down a certain road and then go, you know what, this isn't really for me. I think that's a bit of a waste of time. So I had 18 months out, and I was kind of thinking, well, I'll just wait and see if something comes my way. I have 3 young children that I was wanting to spend a lot of time with. And then I got approached by Newcastle Underline College. Would I be interested in going in, doing a little bit of coaching? And I thought, well, I mean, it's kind of part-time. It fits in around my family, around my children. I'll give that a go. 5 years on, we got the Andy Griffin Football Academy. And what does that entail? What is it? I guess the biggest and the most important thing is it's an experience. And what we try to deliver is a professional footballing club experience. Tag that along with education. But yes, we are a college. We're not a football club. So that's what I'm doing. You're looking at, from the education side of things, it's BTEC level 2, level 3. You've got your A levels. But it's also looking at players that have been released from footballing academies who then, I guess, have been hit with this rejection. You're not good enough. Well, I mean, I got told that I wasn't good enough by a few football clubs, and my Greater Manchester County trials I went to, and I got told I wasn't good enough. Well, you've got to bounce back if and I guess I look at it and think, well, this is up to me, up to John Johnson, who works for me, up to the college to kind of pick up the pieces to look at a young boy or young girl and go, right, the show's not over. Come here, understand what it takes to become a professional footballer from my experience, and give it another go. We'll pick up the pieces. If we need to rebuild you, we will do. Enjoy the experience. Like I said, it is a football club mentality that we try to deliver. Yes, from an educational institution, and let's see where we are after 2 years. You get your qualifications, you'll be a better person for it. You'll have enjoyed the experience, and can we get you into the semi-pro world? Even better, can we get you back into the professional world? But more so, it's about that experience. I'm enjoying it. It's great.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. It sounds very honourable as well. It's like to round these young people in such a way that sets them up for life. Really, really amazing. So that is what Andy's up to. All right, Andy. I promise you could go. So before you do, we're about to play Villa. We play Villa in about 12 minutes. Villa are without Jack Grealish, their best player, which plays into our hands, thank goodness. We are with Joe Linton, who in 70 games has scored 7 goals. So not feeling our chances, but we need a win. With that in mind, will you give me a prediction for this evening's score?
Newcastle at home or away?
We're at home.
You're at home.
With no fans.
Without. I'm going to go 1-1.
Okay.
I'm going to sit on the fence a little bit. Newcastle haven't got a lot of goals in them. Villa are a team that have surprised a lot of people this year, and certainly heading in the right direction. So I see it being a tight game, and yeah, I'll go with a 1-1.
Goals in it, though. What do you think, Si? Si's the king of pessimism, by the way, Andy. So I'm not expecting much from him.
Sadly, you'd take a point, but yeah, I suppose I can see a 1-1 as well. I can't see us scoring a goal, so it's just so hard to see us scoring. But you never know, from a set piece or something. That's the only way we're going to score, or we might get a penalty. We haven't had one of those for a while, so it's possible. It's possible. So I'm going to remain optimistic and not try and ruin my Friday before it's even started, and say 1-1 sounds like an achievable result.
Yeah, and we'd be going into Brighton next week, which is also a huge game. You know, with a point, without a loss, that is something.
Yeah.
Some people saying 1-0. Luke saying 1-0. I don't know if that's to us or to Villa. I'm going to go with us. I'm going to say, I said 1-1 on the preview that we did, Andy, but I'm going to say 1-0 to Newcastle. I don't know who's going to score the goal, but I think we'll score one. So I'm going to hope.
Joe Linton will definitely score after the discussion we had today.
Yeah, that's 100%. True. That's true. We've extensively slagged off Joe Linton's scoring ability, so hopefully he'll. I should have posted him a letter, shouldn't I, Andy? Just being like, you're gonna like a picture of Villa's goalkeeper and just be like, he's gonna save all your goals, and that should have been that.
Do whatever it takes. Do whatever it takes to get this man scoring.
I will. I'm going to get my Pritt stick out for the next game.
Yeah, we've got to get a Lewis Dunk letter for next week and send him
exactly.
that.
Exactly, perfect. We can put that together. Andy, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Si, thank you for all your.
Just quickly, Charlotte. We haven't talked about San Siro, and we've run out of time, but we have talked about that on the Patreon podcast we've done with Andy already, as you've mentioned. So those of you who are patrons will already have heard those, hopefully. But I'm sure there'll be an opportunity to get those out either on YouTube or on the free pod at some point in the summer when we're preparing for a season in the Championship. So I'm sure everyone will get to hear those stories eventually.
Yes, my apologies, Andy. Well, perhaps Andy will come back. I might, if you'll come back on my show one day, we can cover all that. It's been absolutely brilliant having you. Thank you so much, Si. Thank you for pointing that out, and everybody watching. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the game. Take care.